Partially. I was partially wrong about Westbrook. I was partially right too. In the past 3 years since I've been on YouTube, I've made a lot of videos criticizing Westbrook. And a lot of those criticisms were aimed at the player he was 2 or 3 years ago. And since then, we've seen him in a different jersey now. He's changed as a player. But before I get to the end of the video where I talk about what I think I really did get wrong about what I said about Westbrook, let me first clarify the statements I still stand behind. I still think triple-doubles are the most meaningless and useless stat in basketball. I still think that the way Westbrook played, especially in the first 2 seasons after Durant left, were more about individual rather than team. And I do think in those first 2 seasons, you could see him stat padding. But like I mentioned, dating back to his last season in OKC, and especially with these first couple of games with the Houston Rockets, you've seen Westbrook change the way he plays. Now, it's difficult to tell how much of this change is because Westbrook himself changed versus he's just in a different environment. So for example, Houston is the team that attempts the least amount of mid-range jumpers in the league. In fact, it is almost jarring to see a player wearing a Rockets jersey taking a mid-range jumper. Now this has always been one of my biggest criticisms of Westbrook, is that he likes taking these mid-range pull-up jumpers. He likes taking these post fadeaways, and he's not bad at it. He's terrible at it, okay? Atrocious. Just a stat for you. Last season, Westbrook took the 6th most amount of mid-range jumpers per game, more than guys like CJ McCollum and Kyrie and Devin Booker. And what did Westbrook shoot on those mid-range jumpers? 31.8%. Unjustifiably bad. Now, as of the making of this video, Westbrook has only played in 3 or 4 Rockets games, so we can't really use any stats because they're going to change so much because there's no sample size. But so far, just based on the film, Westbrook has been scaling back some of those mid-range jumpers. Now again, a lot of that has to just do with the system he's playing in. Mike D'Antoni's system just doesn't ever call for a guard like Westbrook posting up, on the right block like he's LaMarcus Aldridge or something. And so far you see Westbrook not settling as much for those mid-range jumpers and instead going to the rim where he can then make plays where he's better, where he can then kick it out for open shots. This is, I think, one of the most striking things that you see with Westbrook if you've been paying attention to the Rockets and if you've been paying attention to OKC the last few years. It is so obvious that Westbrook just has a lot more space to operate in Houston. He has shooters around. In every one of the 3 years post-Durant, OKC was bottom 10 in the league in three-point percentage. Now, even when you remove Westbrook's bad percentages, which drag down the average, OKC was still bottom 10 in the league. It's not just about three-point percentage, it's about how defenses respect a certain person's shot. When teams go up against Houston, they know they can't leave any room for Harden. They're trying to get the ball out of Harden's hand. Now last season, Harden proved he was one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, and as good as Paul George was last season offensively in OKC, Paul George never commanded the type of attention that Harden does. Eric Gordon is the same to a lesser degree. Teams know that Gordon isn't afraid to shoot it from a few feet beyond the arc. He isn't afraid to shoot it contested. And if you look at OKC last year, their second best three-point shooter after Paul George was Terrence Ferguson, who attempts about half as many threes as Gordon and doesn't even come close to all the other stuff Gordon can do on the offensive end of the floor. So when you see Westbrook in this new environment, you see that defenses are more hesitant to send help defense when Westbrook goes charging towards the rim because they can't leave space for a lot of the guys on Houston's perimeter. And in the cases where help defense does come, Westbrook is able to then kick it out for open threes. About 2 years ago, I made a video talking about Westbrook's biggest problem. And the central point I made was that Westbrook doesn't know how to play off ball. When he doesn't have the ball, he tends to stand around and just be stagnant. He doesn't do many backdoor cuts, he doesn't set screens, and being a bad shooter, his defender can often help out in the paint or on the perimeter. It got better during his last season in OKC, it did. I mean, Westbrook did make a noticeable change in letting Paul George handle the ball more and create more of the offense, and we've seen that deferring mentality carry over to Houston. There's been a few plays so far this year, like this one, where Westbrook seems to be very active without the ball. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I saw him catch a backdoor lob like this in the half court in OKC. Again, this is a case where we do have to credit the Houston system and the players around Westbrook. James Harden is one of the best passers in the league, and he's the best point guard Westbrook has ever played with. You could even argue OKC Harden was the best point guard Westbrook had ever had until he's recently played with Houston Harden. A lot of my criticisms towards Westbrook were towards Westbrook as a number one option. Again, this is a guy who was voted MVP, and a big reason why I didn't think he should have been voted MVP was that his team had no shot at making it to the championship and had barely had a shot to make it out of the first round. You don't win with Westbrook as your best player, but with Westbrook as your second best player. Unfortunately, this video is not going to be all sunshine and sunflowers about how much and how good Westbrook has been. Houston has problems. Westbrook still has problems. No matter how good Westbrook looks during the regular season, it's a different ball game when we're talking about playoffs. What happens in the playoffs when teams dare Westbrook to shoot and he can't deliver? What happens when his defender sags off of him to help out on Harden ISOs? What happens when he goes back into bad habits of turning the ball over in late game situations? But to summarize this video and bring it back to the title, here's what I think I genuinely did get wrong about Westbrook. Now that I've seen Westbrook in a completely different environment and seeing the way he plays, in hindsight, I should have given even more blame to OKC's front office for not surrounding Westbrook with the right kind of players. Look at what happened last year in 2019 when Milwaukee went and got Brook Lopez and George Hill and Ersan Ilyasova. What happened? It completely opened up Giannis's game to a different level. Now, if you swapped, let's say, 2017 Westbrook in place of last year's Giannis, I mean, the Bucks wouldn't be as good, mostly because Giannis is a much more impactful defender than Westbrook, but that team would still be 50 wins. It'd be better than any of the teams Westbrook had. You know, I'm thinking back, it's all the triple-double nonsense in 2017, just the narrative that the media was shoving in everyone's faces. I think that stuff bothered me so much that it made me push back really hard against Westbrook as an MVP candidate and as a player, and I think I maybe went a little bit too far. It made me focus too much on all the stuff Westbrook can't do and overlook a lot of stuff that he can do. Because what I realized is that Westbrook is a player with very strong strengths and very weak weaknesses, which means that people who watch Westbrook play, people who watch, let's say, even the same game, if you're looking for stuff to praise, you'll find plenty. If you're looking for stuff to criticize, you'll find plenty. On the broader notes, it's really interesting to see Westbrook in a different environment. I think the change is good for Harden, it's good for Houston. Westbrook plays really hard. Nobody can deny that. Sometimes he plays a little too hard, but the energy he brings, I can't put my finger on it because this is obviously very intangible and it's not quantifiable, but the energy he brings does something different to this Houston team. Because Westbrook, in that sense, is the exact opposite of Harden. Harden, who is stoic, never shouts or yells, is the most boring superstar in the league, plays in a very rational, almost analytics-driven manner, and Westbrook is the complete opposite. So again, it's a long road ahead. Playoffs is what ultimately really matters, and everything changes during the playoffs when teams can game plan for each other. But so far, Westbrook at least makes the Houston Rockets a very fun regular season team to watch. And based on how Westbrook has played, it has made me reevaluate maybe some of what I've thought of his tenure during OKC those last 3 years. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to stay in touch with me on other social media, you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. And I will see you next time.